Hey guys, welcome to another swingin' Sunday scan. My plan today is basically go over the market for the week. Let's jump right in and look at the SPY. Last week's bias was short. We had a couple narrow range days. This red bar here on January 4th, we gapped up in the morning and it looked like we were going to go higher. But if you look back here on December 16th, we gapped up over a consolidation similar like we did on the 4th, and we immediately tanked, putting in a big red day. Look back at November 22nd, another gap to the top of this range, a push higher, but ultimately closing lower, putting in another red day. So recently, and in my experience, the SPY tends to have a tough time following through on breakouts over consolidations. When I'm looking at the market, at least the SPY, I tend to look at reversals as the biggest opportunity for moves. So what the market did in the last couple of days wasn't entirely a surprise, but that's not to say you get it right every single time. My market bias on the market at this point is looking for an opportunity to go long. I have two main criteria for having a long bias on the market. One of the criteria we have met by crossing that 50 period moving average, that red line. The second criteria, I use the MACD histogram. Leave a comment below if you want a video explaining in more detail what I mean by that. Let's run through all the ideas we mentioned last week. ENPH. I was pretty excited about this one long, but it has since broken through that 174 area, which I mentioned last week, that if it did, I would likely not be looking at this one long. Further to that, it broke that area pretty fiercely. I've heard some traders say that failed long setups make great shorts. I would say this is a pretty good example of that. I'm not going to stop watching this one. In fact, I'm going to keep this one on my watch list as a short idea. What I'd love to see are pops into the underside of that blue line, which is a 21 period moving average, to find an entry. RBA, similar story. We've broken down below that support area, in this case around the $77 area. The daily chart on this one's not looking great at all. However, the weekly is still holding up somewhat. However, I'm not very excited about this one, but I will continue to watch it. BSIG triggered. I am currently in this stock short. We had a pretty wide range bar here on January 5th. However, we're putting in some narrow range bars last couple days. Not super concerned about it. This one does have a long way to go to hit target, so this is going to require a lot of patience. After doing the Sunday scan last week, I did notice a support area that could be of concern. I just drew in a gray box highlighting the support area. Essentially, to me, it looks like it's testing this area with those narrow range bars. My hope is it can grind through this area and potentially break down with quite a bit of force. I drew in a possible scenario of what this stock could do, putting in a little bounce and maybe even a small consolidation after a breakdown. We'll see what happens, but a consolidation near the support area won't necessarily be a bad thing. It could just lead to a breakdown, and I'm okay with that. FICO, this one has really got me torn. The daily chart has gotten really choppy. You can see we put in a wide range red bar followed by a really wide range green bar. This thing is getting pretty choppy. I don't like trading choppy charts on the daily. However, what's keeping me around is that weekly chart. We put a nice narrow range green doji bar right underneath that red 50 period moving average on the weekly chart. To me, that really is an ideal entry if we can now break below the lows of that bar. So I think for me, as long as I'm putting in an entry on that weekly chart, the ugliness on the daily might be okay to ignore. It does trade pretty smooth on the weekly for the most part, so I think if I stick to that plan, we'll be okay. The main thing, though, to point out is, again, earnings. I mentioned it last week. Because I'm entering on the weekly, I don't think this has any chance of hitting target before earnings. So I'm really hoping this can hold up and stay in a narrow range so that by the time earnings comes, we can put in a trade after earnings has been announced. We shall see. ALIT. This was the new issue I mentioned last week. I did not take this trade. However, this one went almost directly to target in 3 days. The trade triggered at $10.75. My planned target was $9.79. Short. This would have been a great trade to start off the year, but oh well. On to the next one. MRUS. Last week I mentioned this was pretty aggressive. Reason being, one could look at this as a potential breakout since there was a pretty lengthy 5-day consolidation under that $33 area. However, at the moment, it's looking pretty good short. It nearly went twice the risk. However, I'm feeling okay about missing this one because right now, to me, it looks like this could be played as a long. Something else I've heard some great traders say is it's better to be out of a trade wishing you were in than being in a trade wishing you were out. KSS. I'm currently not in this trade. This one had a gap down on Friday to end the week, but it rallied with a pretty wide range green bar. Not a fan of how this stock trades. I still like the bias on how we could see a big move lower, but finding an entry on the stock is really tricky, and I'm probably gonna just watch this one. HALO, another one that looks pretty good. My concerns last week on this one was that healthy rally from the lows. Something that I didn't pay attention to last week, which should have been a concern, was the fact that this stock, although was in a trend, has since broken that trend line. Although this stock looks pretty good short for the time being, if I was in this, I would probably be concerned about that area approaching the top of that trend line box as a potential area where the stock might bounce. This is not a perfect science. So this trade is long gone. We missed the entry, but I will continue to watch this just to gain more experience with the markets. BHC, almost an exact same story to the last stock we just looked at. This would have triggered. I am not in this stock, but again, we're in that area where it could bounce off of this trend line. I'll be watching this one to see what happens. Tesla, TSLA. I mentioned that I do not like trading this stock due to the fact that it gaps very often and is very choppy. The first day of the year, what does it do? It gaps up 8%. Not only did it gap up 8%, it would have gapped up above my stop loss and I would have got some nasty slippage. This is exactly why I don't like trading gappy stocks. When a stock gaps often, it's very likely that it will gap in the future. Tesla will likely stay off my watch list indefinitely unless its price action changes. Before we get into the new ideas, I just wanted to point out why having a market bias is so important. We just went through 10 trade ideas looking to go both long and short. The S&P 500 had a red week and all 10 ideas also had a red week. When you're trading, you want to use every advantage in your favor. Getting to know the S&P 500 is a must. A large percentage of stocks trade in the same direction as the S&P 500. As a suggestion to new traders, something that I have done was actually trade the S&P 500. When you trade a stock, you watch it much more intently, and if you trade the S&P 500, you will get to know it better much faster. And that leads me to my first new idea. I had trouble finding a lot of quality long ideas, so my first idea is the SPY. I'm looking at getting into this long, potentially over that $470 area with risk under the 464 area, target around 485. Now, I'm not going to get in this blindly on Monday morning. I want this to get above that 470 area. If we gap up over that area, it really depends on how far it gaps because I use stop limit orders to get into my swing trades. So if it's beyond the limit on my stop limit order, I might not get filled. With all my trade ideas, if we get below my risk area, my original idea is canceled, but If there's still a trade, I would readjust my entry and risk, also with the new target. I have 5 more ideas. The next 3 are all Canadian TSX stocks. The last 2 are US-based stocks. First one up, GRT.UN, Granite REIT. This one, I'm using a pretty similar strategy to the SPY. We have a pretty smooth retrace to that red 50 period moving average. I'll be looking at my MACD histogram for an entry on this to go long. I drew in approximate entry, risk, and target levels. However, the exact numbers will really be dependent on how it trades the next couple days. Next idea, RNW. I'm looking at this one long. The main reason I'm looking at this one is how well it's holding up at the $18 area. I'm not super crazy about this one. If this one was going to bounce, it probably should have bounced by now. In fact, this looks like this could even be a decent short breakdown. One thing I'll note is if you look at the monthly chart, the retrace to that area was pretty smooth, and we have 2 narrow range bars right at that $18 level. That red bar showing the current state of this month looks pretty nasty and looks like there might be momentum to the downside. However, if I remove that red bar, the pattern looks pretty good. What I'm looking for basically is a break over the highs of that doji bar, which is $19. If we can get that, I would take a chance at this long. I do like the amount of room it has back up to that prior pivot of $22. And since the $18 is such a significant level, I'd be happy as using that as a risk level. Something to keep in mind is breakdowns can lead to slippage. So something that I'm going to do if I take this trade is likely make my risk level somewhere around $18.20. Reason being, I'd rather get taken out by a few pennies than take a whole lot of slippage if this breaks down. Right now, this one's just a watch for me. Next is FTS. We're getting a pretty smooth retrace to a supply zone. I'm looking for a bounce. The decline on this has been pretty steep. I would call this pretty aggressive. The thing I like about this stock is if we go back to the end of 2018 and most of 2019, this went on a pretty long rally. It basically held both the 21 and 50 period moving averages for almost a year. Along this trend, I could have banked 3 different trades that fit my current criteria, all of them going a full 3R. This long run came after a long consolidation period after a pretty deep retrace. Something else I've heard some great traders say, they've borrowed the saying, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. Stocks don't always do the same things over and over again, but if it's done it in the past, there's a higher likelihood that it will do it again. So my hope with FTS is my idea with FTS is we watch this for a good initial first trade, but my long-term hope is we enter in a long uptrend that offers many opportunities for the rest of the year. Next is PFE. I hesitated putting this one on mainly for how extended it is on the monthly and the weekly. The retrace is a bit sloppy, but we are heading into a support area. The volume is increasing. The stock looks like it might want to put in a run. This one is looking a bit like a chase, so I'm kind of second guessing putting an entry in for this one, but I'm going to watch it regardless. Last but not least, RGR. I have entered this stock short. My entry was 68.25. I was a little bit late. My ideal entry would have been 68.73, but I liked how this one looked and I got in regardless. TradingView says earnings is February 23rd. I'll make sure I'm out of this stock before then. It looks like we should have enough time for this trade to shape up. We have a support area around the 62.54 area. If we get into this area, I'll likely take at least a partial profit. Reason being, it could easily bounce there and send this stock higher. We don't have enough time to sit through a pivot, so might as well at least take some profits there and hope that we can hit target for the last half. That's it for the Sunday scan, guys. If you like this content, please give us a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button with the alerts to get alerts anytime I send out new content. I would love some feedback to hear what you guys like and don't like. Thanks very much, guys. Trade safe, and I'll catch you on the next one.